Edward Miller was born in an era when wealth was counted in land and grain, and survival depended on the mercy of seasons. His village lay beside a winding dirt road that traders rarely used, a place forgotten by progress and remembered only by hardship. Most homes were built from stone, stacked by tired hands, and the smell of damp earth lingered in the air year-round. Edward's family owned no land of their own. His father worked as a hired field hand, planting and harvesting crops for landowners who never spoke his name. His mother sold milk and eggs when the animals were healthy enough to produce them. Some days there was bread. Other days there was silence around the table. From childhood, Edward understood one truth clearly: effort did not guarantee reward. He saw men work until their bodies broke and still die poor. He saw storms destroy crops in hours that took months to grow. And he learned that complaining changed nothing. When Edward was 16, a drought struck the region. Wells dried, crops failed, and hunger spread through the village. His father weakened from exhaustion and malnutrition. One morning, he did not rise from his bed. He lived, but the strength that once fed the family never returned. Edward became the provider overnight. He worked anywhere he could: fields, barns, stables, roads. Payment came in coins or food, sometimes promises that were never kept. Many nights, Edward fell asleep with empty hands and a heavy heart. He began to believe that poverty was a cage with no door. But one day changed everything. A traveling grain merchant arrived in the village with several wagons of wheat and barley. Edward helped unload the sacks and noticed something others ignored. While farmers struggled to sell raw grain for low prices, the merchant sold flour for nearly triple the value. Edward asked him, "Why does flour sell for more than grain?" The merchant laughed. "Because people don't pay for effort, boy. They pay for usefulness." Those words settled deep inside Edward's mind. That night, he sat alone near the fields, staring at the dry soil. He realized something powerful. The village grew grain, but no one processed it. They sold raw work cheaply and bought finished goods dearly. Poverty wasn't only about lack of labor. It was about lack of vision. Edward decided to change that. He had no money, no mill, and no support. But he had patience. He began by observing old water wheels along the river, abandoned and broken. He spent evenings speaking with elders who remembered how grain was once ground locally. He offered labor in exchange for knowledge. Slowly, he learned. For 2 years, Edward saved every coin. He repaired tools instead of buying new ones. He ate less so he could save more. People mocked him. "What are you saving for?" they asked. Edward only replied, "For tomorrow." When he finally had enough, he bought a small, broken-down mill near the river. The building leaned, the wheel barely turned, and weeds filled the doorway. Most people would have walked away. Edward saw opportunity. He repaired the mill with his own hands. He replaced broken planks, cleaned gears, and worked through cold nights by firelight. It took months. Many times he thought of quitting. Many times fear whispered that he was wasting his life. But discipline spoke louder. The day the wheel finally turned smoothly, Edward stood alone inside the mill and listened to the sound of grinding stone. It was the sound of change. At first, farmers laughed. "We'll grind our grain ourselves," they said. Edward smiled and waited. Then he offered something new: fair prices, consistent quality, and respect. He didn't cheat weights. He didn't delay payments. Slowly, farmers came. Then more came. Within a year, Edward's mill became the heart of the village. But success never arrives without resistance. Local traders felt threatened. One confronted Edward. "You're disrupting business. Know your place." Edward replied calmly, "My place is where value is created." Trade routes shifted. Merchants began buying flour directly from Edward instead of raw grain from others. His mill expanded. He hired workers, men who once stood beside him in hunger. Edward paid them fairly. Years passed. The village changed. Homes improved. Hunger faded. Children grew healthier. All because one man refused to sell effort cheaply. One winter, the same grain merchant who once laughed at Edward returned. He examined the mill, the storage, the steady flow of wagons. "You learned well," he said. Edward nodded. I listened. By 40, Edward Miller owned multiple mills along the river. But he never forgot the boy who carried sacks for coins. He reinvested in the village, repaired roads, and taught others how to create value instead of waiting for mercy. On the final night of 1 year, Edward stood by the river watching the wheel turn steadily in the moonlight. Water flowed. Stone moved. Grain transformed. He understood then that success was not about escaping hardship, but mastering it. Poverty taught him patience. Hunger taught him discipline. Rejection taught him vision, and that is how a poor village boy became a wealthy man. Not by working harder than everyone else, but by thinking deeper, enduring longer, and refusing to sell his future cheaply. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories inspired by Eric Bertrand Larssen.